Hey, how's it going? I'm Josh from 91 Tech, and only yesterday we had Apple's yearly iPhone event, and I'm not angry, just disappointed. Okay, no, but really, this was a fairly lackluster event, even by modern iPhone standards, in my opinion, but it's also exactly what I expected. So I don't know if I can truly say I'm disappointed if my expectations were already quite low. Just as an early disclaimer, I don't think the new iPhones are bad. I think they're fine. I think they're actually really good. You know, if you buy these phones, you will probably really like them. They're just not super exciting upgrades, and that's fine. Not every year is going to be an exciting upgrade, but don't take all my negativity as me saying you shouldn't buy these phones. If you're on an older iPhone or something and want to, go for it. I think you'll probably really like them. I myself may not, I'm not so sure yet, but just wanted to make that clear because I don't want to come off as too negative. But let's start with the other stuff that was in the event, just a couple little things. We got the Apple Watch Series 10. I think it's fine. Speaker is an interesting addition. I'm actually still using my now 5-year-old Series 5, and even though it's not getting the latest updates anymore, I don't personally feel the need to upgrade quite yet. The battery is fine for me so far. AirPods 4 look good, I guess. I'm not a fan of Apple making people pay extra to get AirPods with noise cancellation, but I kinda get it. It's a feature a lot of people just won't care about, and saving a little cash is nice. It's whatever. I do find it funny they still haven't given the AirPods Max any proper upgrade. Those things are old at this point, but don't worry, at least they've got more colors and USB-C now. I do think the hearing aid features coming to the AirPods Pros 2 could actually be incredibly useful for those who would benefit from it, so props to Apple for doing that. That is pretty cool. Okay, that's it for the non-iPhone stuff. Let's go to the iPhone 16 line. As per usual, the 15 Pro is discontinued altogether. No price increase this year, at least in the US, so that's good. Now, in a recent video, I said this might be the first time in a long time I don't buy the new iPhone, specifically a 2-hour, definitely brief retrospective on when iPhone peaked and why they all seem so boring these days. Link in the description to that. And I'm still undecided. I'm gonna think on it this week. Right now, I'm leaning towards not buying the new iPhone, as Apple failed to really excite me with any new features, but we'll table that for now. I'm going to talk about a couple things here, the iPhone 16, then the 16 Pro, and then we'll go over the iPhone lineup as a whole. I've got a couple things to say about that, especially with the $430 iPhone SE sticking around. But first, the iPhone 16 and 16 Plus have gotten a minor redesign, and I think they're pretty nice looking. The colors in particular are the most vibrant, and I think the coolest we've had in a while. With Apple recently having had more pale, light colors, that blue is pretty slick. I think all the colors look great, honestly. It's a really nice looking phone. Of course, those cameras are now vertically aligned, which is for the sake of spatial video, which is something I'm sure the half dozen of Vision Pro owners will be ecstatic about. The action button was added over the slider finally, and we've also got what is probably the biggest addition to both these phones as well as the Pros, the camera control button there, which looks pretty versatile in terms of functionality. I really wouldn't consider this any sort of system seller, but it's a neat addition, and I can appreciate Apple doubling down on making their phones more useful for photography. There was plenty of interesting new features with the camera app, and I'm sure they'll be fun to play around with. My real takeaway here though is that Apple actually gave the non-Pro iPhones this camera control thing, unlike the action button last year with the 15 Pro and 15s. The probably flashiest new feature to come to the 16 Pro is on the 16. I think that's a step in the right direction. Considering the iPhone 16 is barely less expensive than the 16 Pro, I'm glad to see it, as am I glad to see the A18 chipset. Yeah, so the 16 Pro gets the A18 Pro chipset, but we have the A18 here, which the main difference is like one less GPU core. Definitely not a big deal, and I'm so happy we're not looking at these phones getting the last generation chip like we saw with the iPhone 14 and 15. Again, another step in the right direction, at least in my opinion. The display sizes are the same as ever, 6.1 inches and 6.7, and yes, they are still 60 Hz, much to the chagrin of some of the guys in the Discord voice channel I was watching the event with. You should join our Discord, by the way, if you haven't already. There's some pretty cool people over there. But yeah, no promotion, and supposedly that might come next year on the iPhone 17, according to some rumors. I'm not at all surprised, and while I fully agree it's cheap and annoying on Apple's part, I also understand why they haven't bothered upgrading that display to 120 Hz. The reality is, most people just don't really care if they don't even know what a refresh rate is to begin with. Maybe they would notice if they see the phones side by side, but even then, ProMotion is just not a big deal to probably the vast majority of consumers, at least from those I've talked to. Is it cheap on Apple's part? Absolutely, but I wouldn't write these phones off just because of it. I'd expect they'll sell very similar numbers to the last couple non-Pro iPhones. I'm more sad there's still no mini iPhone, again, especially since the Plus model itself barely sells anyways. I almost feel like Apple could just make a third size option in that line, charge $700 for like a 5.6 or 5.8 inch display a little bigger than the last mini. That would make it maybe more appealing to a wider audience, but still small enough to be good for the users who prefer that form factor. But odds are we'll never see another mini, which really sucks. box. Who knows what the next SE will look like? Maybe it'll fit that role. I kind of doubt it, but you never know. But either way, we've got the 16 and the 16 Plus, and if you want something smaller, you're kind of out of luck. The ceramic shield apparently has gotten better, so the glass is stronger, but I would take that with a grain of salt. Glass is glass, and yeah, glass breaks. So having a case and a screen protector is always going to be a good idea with any smartphone. Battery life has gotten a little better. We still have USB 2 transfer speeds from the USB-C port, and MagSafe charging is now faster if you have the right power adapter. Overall, I think the iPhone 16 is actually a fairly decent iPhone upgrade. It's a lot more appealing to me than the 14 or 15 was, even without the Pro Motion. I miss the Mini, but I think for those who will buy these phones, they'll probably have a really good time with them. And ultimately, that's what's going to matter most, the user experience. Pricey, sure, but at least we did get the camera control button, and I feel like in past years, Apple would have saved that for solely their Pro iPhones only. Again, step in the right direction. These are good looking phones, and I definitely wouldn't blame anybody who's interested in buying one. But alright, let's talk about the 16 Pro and the 16 Pro Max. The 16 Pro design is basically identical to the 15 Pro, but the size has increased, looking at 6.1 inches to 6.3, and then 6.7 inches to 6.9. I like this move on paper. It's something to differentiate these phones from the non-pros, but as an owner of the 6.7 inch iPhone 15 Pro Max, it leaves me personally in a weird spot. I don't want a bigger phone. This one is big enough already, but I don't really want a phone much smaller either, as 6.3 inches from my current Max is definitely that. So if I was to upgrade, which right now I'm leaning towards not doing in all honesty, I actually don't know which one I would get. 6.9 inches is also really big. We're almost at iPad mini levels. The first generation was 7.9 inches. And you remember the Nexus 7, a very popular line of tablets? Yeah, they were 7 inches. And now our iPhones are basically just as big. The 16 Pro Max is certainly the definition of a phablet anyways. Alright, we've got the camera control stuff, 4K video at 120 frames per second. There's a bunch of different features for photography and filmmaking, including some audio stuff. It's pretty neat, although I can't help but think most people who are into this sort of stuff are already going to be using a proper real camera and would prefer to continue doing so. Still, this sort of thing can only get better as time goes on, and with these features trickling down into more iPhones and smartphones as time goes on, they'll become more available and accessible to more people, thus hopefully making it easier for people to get into this stuff to begin with. Smartphones have made content creation, just starting out, far more accessible than it has ever been, and I absolutely think that's a good thing. Heck, when I started out on YouTube myself, I was filming 4K video with my iPhone 6S, and you know what? It was 100% good enough for what I was doing. Anyways, a bit of a tangent, but basically camera stuff, it's all good. I'm happy about it. I'm not super excited about any of it in particular. I think the camera control stuff is cool. It's not a system seller for me, but I'm happy it's there. We have the A18 Pro chipset, and battery life has apparently gotten a good bit better. Makes sense with the larger sizes. Apple Intelligence played a huge role in the event, and frankly, I haven't mentioned it until now because I just don't really care. I'm so tired of hearing about AI these last couple of years, and while it's great Apple is finally doing some of this stuff, I can't help but be skeptical about how useful most of it will end up being. Making custom emojis, sure, pretty neat, but a lot of the other stuff, especially with how Apple needs ChatGPT to apparently make up for their own shortcomings, I'm a bit worried about it. Ultimately, I think this is just a current trend Apple's jumping aboard, but hopefully it'll turn out to be something more useful than I'm expecting. Now, one thing I am disappointed in is the selection of colors for the 16 Pro. For one, this phone is so close looking to the 15 Pro, I hardly could tell the difference without the camera control button, but every year Apple does have a somewhat unique color and a few general options. Last year, the natural titanium color was advertised heavily. I got it myself, and it's still there this year, but the blue is gone, which I think is kind of disappointing. I probably would have gotten that color were I to buy this phone and had the choice. In fairness, there wasn't a gold color last year, so this time we get the all-new desert titanium. And don't get me wrong, this is a beautiful phone. These phones will no doubt be fantastic for people who buy them. iPhones and smartphones at large these days are just really good. As I talked about in my recent 2-hour-long video that I will keep shilling as much as possible, there's really just not a whole lot of headroom for phones to continually improve in any dramatic sense year to year. A lot of the big things that needed to happen with smartphones have already happened, like reducing bezels, hence the main upgrades on a yearly basis, revolving around the photography and the speeds, because those things are still improving at a steady rate. It's not reasonable to expect Apple to have a big release every year, but even so, I can't help but be a bit disappointed in the 16 Pro. It's just so milquetoast, just exactly what I expected it to be. There were zero surprises, there were no fun moments that stood out during the event, just better camera, speeds, and Apple Intelligence. Still, these will be great phones, and if you have the cash and you need a new iPhone, heck, why not, right? Just be wary of the lack of promotion, the 60 Hz on the non-Pro iPhone 16, but aside from that, I think both phones for what they are pretty solid. Small upgrades over the previous models, but upgrades all the same. I very well may not buy the iPhone 16 Pro this year. It would mark the first time I didn't get the newest iPhone in a very long time. I've been doing it yearly since the iPhone 10 in 2017, which I also discussed in that recent retrospective. Basically, 16 Pro is a disappointing coming from a 15 Pro? Absolutely. An older iPhone? It would probably be a pretty nice upgrade. And there are genuinely a few things to be excited about. Okay, so before we wrap this up, I wanted to talk about the iPhone lineup at large. Naturally, the 13 is now gone and the 14 has become the base tier model, aside from Apple's budget offering, which is the iPhone SE from 2022, which is there, unchanged, at $429. 1 year ago, I did a video about how this was one of Apple's worst deals. I could honestly just re-upload that video and it would somehow be even more relevant than it was then. It's an iPhone 8 with a chipset from the iPhone 13 for only $170 less than the iPhone 14, a significantly better phone in every possible aspect. This is a terrible deal, and I probably will make another full video because I think it's worth talking about. I know the new iPhone SE is probably just right around the corner, but for Apple to not even bother lowering the price to something more reasonable is so painfully typical of them, and I would strongly recommend you do not buy that phone unless you're getting one heck of a deal. Even then, honestly, I would go up to the iPhone 14. It's going to be a much better experience. But that's about it from me for now. Those were my honest impressions from the event, and I'll no doubt have some more videos discussing some of this in the coming days. Are any of you planning on buying one of the new iPhones? Again, I think they're going to be really great devices. Nothing wrong with buying one if you want to. It's just not going to be worth it if you already have an iPhone 15 or 15 Pro. Even the 14 and 14 Pro, I would probably wait another year, but definitely want to hear from all of you in the comments. What do you think about these phones? Make sure you leave your thoughts down below. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this video interesting, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more tech content. Huge shout out to the channel members for being absolutely amazing people, and without further ado, go check out that 2-hour long retrospective. I'm Josh from 91 Tech, and I will see you all next time.